From the Virginia Audio Collective at WTJU 91.1 FM and Brown College at the University of Virginia, this is Symposia. Welcome back to Symposia. I'm Sage Tangway. Today's episode will feature the Q&A session from photojournalist Louie Palu's presentation of The Next Cold War from VQR's Fall 2024 issue, as well as some thoughts from a student attendee who plans to pursue media production after graduation. If you haven't already listened to part 1, now is a great time to go back and do so. Without further ado, let's listen in. We'll start with a question from VQR's Paul Reyes.
Watching the soldiers and then talking with you while we worked on this project, and then looking at the arc of your work, how do the extremities compare? And in particular with soldiers who were serving, or the U.S. soldiers who were training in Finland, were any of them in Afghanistan or Iraq?
In terms of the extremities, like when I'm covering something, it's very basic. Like these big picture things are kind of happening in the background, but I'm just dealing with the individuals in front of me and what they might be involved in or a part of. Everything else is just practical, and I deal with it as it comes along, and I usually feel like I'm ready for it. I don't know how many people here fish, but I fish like 3 times a week at least. I ride horses, so cold, wet. I grew up with a dad who he took me hunting when I was a kid and said, it was November, we were in Northern Ontario, so it's really cold, and he goes, do you know how cold the water in that lake is? I said, no, and he pushed me in, and he said, now you know not to fall in the lake. And I walked around wet in November, and I'll tell you, if anyone's from any more northern states, I mean, wet in November here would be cold. Like, it was below 0, below 32. I just grew to like being uncomfortable.
And what about the soldiers themselves? Did they say anything? How'd they do?
You know, soldiers are interesting because we can learn a lot about them, because a lot of soldiers, there's veterans and they have unique experiences. They're from all over, they're from cities, they're from rural areas. And a lot of them are like 19 and 20. And I just think one of my mentors was a Vietnam veteran. He served 2 tours in Vietnam. And I just think he told me that he went when he was 19 and he spent the rest of his life trying to figure out what he had experienced in these 2 years on his tours. And I thought, wow, like, where do they go? Where and how do they recruit people into the military? And over time, I have friends who are veterans. They become very different people from when they went in the military, have different experiences. And what economic background are they from? Imagine, I mean, everybody here is just out of high school and college, but imagine, some Marines I know who were 18 or 19 went and fought in Iraq right away. They trained, they went right away in a war zone, and they're the front end of the foreign policy of the entire U.S. Congress and the president. So all these people who've been in wars and all experience, and now they got to implement this thing that has to do with this big, I think that's really fascinating. Yeah. I think it's really fascinating. I think it's fascinating that we send people to wars and they come home, we train them to kill people, and then they're supposed to just come back and be normal. I think that, do we have a system that helps people when they come back? I know I have a lot of friends who are veterans, who have a lot of, I'm not in no way speaking so critically of the United States where it's a bad thing. I'm just saying, what's our system? Like, do we help people when they come back? Or we just, this is sort of my Louie personal side, because I have friends, or we just, hey, thanks, we're throwing you away now. Or, hey, here's some drugs, that'll take care of that problem. Now, thank you, we got another war we got to fight over here. So I just think war is something that goes on for a really long time. I'm here because U.S. troops liberated my parents' village.
How did they react to you? Was it with suspicion? Was it curiosity?
Yeah.
Because I've heard of many other stories where some reporters are basically like hazed until they've proven themselves.
Yeah. I think look, there's soldiers, officers, no matter what country they're in, they're all kinds of different individuals, and the experiences vary. I think they're so practical. Their big thing is, do we have to babysit you and take care of you all the time? So like, what is this person going to be like if there's a casualty? Are they going to respect our space while we're taking care of someone who might die, who's our friend? Are they going to follow this kind of rule we have where we notify next of kin before you publish a photo of someone? What kinds of photos are you going to publish? Are there conversations that are private that just like it's us joking around and you're not working either? Are you going to write all that too? What are the rules? But really, it's really practical. I don't want to have to, can you carry a backpack and walk 10 miles? Are you strong enough? Can you sleep on the ground? When the shooting starts, are you going to be a problem? Like you can't, when you go out on a combat operation, you can be like, I'm out, man. My back hurts. I'm going to stand up now. I'm like, I don't want to do this. It's like, no, man, once you're in, you're in. Like, you got to go. And you're not going to put your flash on your camera and, like, in the dark on the sneak attack, like, be using your flash and give, you know, there are real stories of people, TV crews turning lights on in the middle of a surprise attack. It's like, so I think a lot of it is practical. A lot of it is just ethical. And I think there's these Marine portraits I took that are really well known. When I got there, I covered so much frontline fighting. I thought, I don't want to do that. I wanted to know where these guys were from, what state they were from, how old they were. And so I think for the first week I didn't take pictures. And then they called in a meeting. I'm like, oh man, I think I said something wrong. They're like, are you ever going to take photos? Like, you've been here for a week. I said, I've been listening, man. And they're like, oh, no one ever did that before. I just listened. And I thought, I just want to take pictures of them. Not shooting. I want to know where they're from. Because I think it's interesting, because I kind of think of those troops landing in Italy, kind of like these Marines, like no one landed and kind of going to John's earlier remarks, like we're better together than apart. I thought, no one's like, get away from me, man, you're a Republican, we got to fight the war. You Democrat. No one cares about that when you're in that. It's me and you, and we're here to survive, and will you respect who I am, and I'll respect who you are. We both got a job to do. So once in a while, someone said, I don't want my photo taken. I'm like, okay, no problem. Or I think I had someone yell to me, you know, we landed with a helicopter. It was a medevac. Someone had their leg blown off. I got a helicopter. I was with the medic who I was supposed to stay with. And they were carrying this guy up. And I took a photo. And, gunfire. And someone ran up to me and goes, why the fuck are you taking pictures? He was upset that I had maybe violated this really horrible moment to them. I didn't say anything. The medic said, shut the fuck up and focus on the casualty. I flew away and I felt really terrible. And I found him and we talked and he understood what my job is. But in that moment, who's this guy taking pictures? Your friend who just had his leg blown off, So sometimes there's no way of knowing, but just being honest and trying to be a good person.
To expand on that, are there basic, whether it's Marines or, again, miners or just a random crowd in front of the Capitol, storming the Capitol, are there basic do's and don'ts of embedding or even just getting into a group scenario quickly and just, there's a lane to stay in?
Yeah, I think what's important is to understand who you are, what you believe in, and then kind of understand all the sides, right? Because in the end, all those people who attack the Capitol, whatever your views on them are, they're back amongst us living their lives. And there are stories of people who are like, that was a mistake. I'm not going to defend people who are extreme right-wing or people who have committed violence. But, hey, people go to prison, have to come back and reintegrate into society. So I think it's important to understand all sides, right? That's how we build a better society. We understand all sides, right? And we listen to all sides. I'm at the Ellipse. President's giving the speech. I get on my bike because all the roads are closed. I cycle up to the Capitol, lock my bike, go in the Capitol. I'm like, wow, 2020. Thank God this year is over. I'm done with all this stuff, man. Like protests, statues coming down, violence, right-wing groups fighting left-wing groups, tear gas, pepper spray in my face. I'm like, and then the vote. I'm like, I can get the votes going by. Like no matter what you think of the Capitol or the history of the United States, there's just places that are special. And here I am. This ceremony's been going on a long time. They have these chests with the votes, and the vice president is going to lead the Senate over to the House, and they're going to certify the election, and the next president-elect will be president. So I'm there, and there's Pence, right? 1:30. No one else but me is taking the picture, and he's talking to Sergeant at Arms. And I have no idea. I know there's a protest outside, but I thought, okay, those idiots, they're out there. I'll go photograph that later. And they walk over. There's an objection. They have to bring the votes back to the Senate. And I thought, I'm going to go, ready? I'm going to go have my arugula sandwich, my San Pellegrino. I got this nice prosciutto sandwich. It's funny because it's surreal because that's what I'm thinking. And I'm checking my Twitter. I'm going back to the Russell Senate office building, which is an office building right beside the Capitol. And I look and I'm like, whoa, there's people on the inauguration stands. Like, that's verboten. Like, there's Capitol Police with assault rifles protected. You're not allowed there. I'm like, this is bad. So I went outside, and then as I crested the hill to the Capitol, it was like 8,000 people attacking the Capitol. Like, people climbing the walls. I thought the police had been overrun. And the door I go in the north entrance of the Capitol, there was like tear gas pillowing out, and I thought, I know what my job is. I'm gonna make sure I get photos of everybody here that I can photograph and what's going on, so there's a record of this. So I went straight down, talking about those moments. I went straight down. I thought, I'm going right down in the crowd. I retired from war photography. I thought I went down. I'm in the middle of it, and they're attacking, moving up the Capitol, breaking windows. And I just thought to start, I had my Ohio camouflage on. My wife will laugh. I had my Carhartt jacket with a nice Tractor Supply hat on. And I had a flag gaiter over my COVID mask because I was still worried. There's no vaccine at the time. So I just thought, I went by a tree, and I just took my GoPro, and I just looked like an average person in this crowd. I made little bits of film because I had to make a short film. And then I thought, I better take some pictures. So under my coat, I had my cameras. I took my cameras out, and I just took a photo, and obviously I look professional now. And someone who had read tweets by elected officials that Antifa had photographers in the crowd screamed and pointed at me and said, Antifa photographer. And in that crowd, that's not a good thing. I don't even know an Antifa photographer. That doesn't even exist. So anyway, talking to your point, I usually don't talk to people or get in debates because I'm not there for that. I'm there to take pictures. I turn around, and 4 large men with clubs, one with a nail in a stick, a bat, surrounded me, and I said, whoa, 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 I'm a journalist. One had no shirt on. They were all taller than me, bigger than me. And right now the riot's going on. Like, people are attacking, and I'm surrounded. I have to like de-escalate. I said, whoa, whoa, I'm a photographer, National Geographic. My press card's in my pocket. They're like, prove it. You know, they were in this stance to like attack me. And I said, whoa, whoa, let me just pull it out. And I thought, okay, let me make them feel like they're in charge. I said, sorry. I said, is it okay if I get it out of my pocket? And they're like, yes. So I said, I'm going to get it out. I took it out, and they leaned forward, and they looked very angry. And they looked at my press pass and said National Geographic, and they go, oh. And they all come down, and they go, one guy goes, zebras and giraffes, yeah? and now you have to understand, as I'm having this conversation, there's like tear gas flying, people attacking, overrunning the Capitol. And I said, yes, zebras and giraffes. And he goes, okay. I said, is it okay if I had my hand still up? I said, is it okay if I leave now? And they said, yeah. And they just turned around and kept moving with the crowd. And I went back up, and I thought, I got to keep going. So I went up, and then they had broken through the window into the Senate, and I went into the building, and there were just people fighting each other. Americans fighting Americans. Police firing rubber bullets down the hallway of the Senate. I mean, what a disgrace, So I thought, you know what? U.S. troops liberated my village. I thought, this is the beacon. My parents, grade 4 reading lab, this is it. And I thought, I know my job, I'm gonna make a record of everything going on here. And that's what I did. And there were more surreal moments, but there's times where you talk to people, and it's just surreal, and you can't imagine what's gonna happen. So I was there for about 4.5 hours, but say in the Arctic, it's just you in a tent with one other person. You're so lonely, man. You know how far away you are from everything, and you wake up in the morning, and it's dark. It's nighttime all day. Can't phone Chloe, my cool wife. Can't phone, there's no phone signal. There's a sat phone. Some people maybe have it, but if you pull it out, even just to take a selfie, your phone dies in 2 seconds. If you take your gloves off with your bare fingers to press the phone, you can get frostbite. So if you lose your gloves in the Arctic, you could die. Your hands will get frostbite, and you will lose your hands. So you tie strings on them, when you're a little kid, and you're like the snow. If you grow up in your little mitts, but I have big mitts, so. But it's a really interesting place that teaches you about our relationship to the world and what our ideas of security are and what technology is and who the original scientists are, of the world, and innovations made way before we came along. So,
I was wondering, so when you're in these perilous situations, how do you grapple between like what's happening right in front of your eyes and the sort of artistic shot that you want to get. Do you have time to like fiddle with your settings on your camera and get the right angle that you want, or is it more just like rapid shot and hope anything that you get?
So I've been doing, thanks, this is a good question. So basically, I think at 30 years, I know how to work my cameras so much. I still make lots of mistakes, but I know I'm there to take pictures and I have to get pictures. And there's a time to stay and there's a time to leave, or there's a time to keep going. I'm like, oh, wall. It's very robotic. It's like wall, shooting, not through wall, me there, soldiers left, you know. Should I go there? Sometimes you have to take calculated risks. When I was younger, I took calculated risks and I was like, I'm never doing that again, kind of thing. But I would say in the Arctic, you know, I would get to place and they're like, you have 4 hours. It took me 5 days to get there. And you're the only photographer to ever come here. And I'm like, okay, I don't care how I have to make a photo. As long as it's ethical, I'm coming back with something from here. So, or, you know, you have tools like Flash. I think Flash is an important tool you can use to help enhance a situation, lighting, just how you use your lenses, how you understand the situation, or you can default to portraits. You know, just I know what I can do right away. But in terms of when there's a lot, like say a riot or there's activity, I have a whole safety course I teach just for photographers. I have the nerdiest tote bags like from bookstores, and I carry my camera bags in those, and I look like not a photographer or a journalist. And when I go to places where there's gonna be violence, I kind of look like just a passerby with my cameras inside my tote bags. And if I feel like I can work, I'll take them out. If I feel like I can't work, then I just keep going. So I think when you can, and I think some people, especially if it's, you know, white power groups, you can't make yourself invisible when you're around those kinds of groups, but think of trying to make yourself, you know, as less noticeable as possible. So, or partner with people. Or some places, just don't go, you know. Sometimes you just don't photograph. There's some places too dangerous.
Could you expand what technology exactly means to you?
This is a great question. What is technology to me? For me, technology is something beyond our physical body, where we take materials and put them together or shape them into something to help us do something or help us get or survive something or live in a way beyond just our basic means of going and grabbing a fruit off a tree or cupping our hands. Like a glass is a piece of technology. That's an invention, right? When I started going to the Arctic, the first thing I did was I spent weeks with a lot of Indigenous leaders. The Canadian military actually has a course for their soldiers who go in the Arctic to teach them about the history of colonialism. It's pretty, I don't want to give too many compliments to the military, but in this case, I thought it was really interesting where they bring someone in from the Indigenous community to teach a course. And I just started thinking that before we got here, things like boats, well, they made boats out of animal skin. They would sew it together. Sleds, okay, if we take a snowmobile is a form of engineering and technology. Well, so is taking animal parts, shaping them, whether it's the antlers as the ski sled, and then gluing them with ice. That for me is engineering and technology, and it takes research and experimentation, just like you have to do experiments to, you know, discover nuclear power. It's the foundation, I think, of where all this other stuff comes from. And I like to call it technology because I like to point a sort of critical finger a little bit at what we think is more advanced than sort of Indigenous groups who started, in many ways, innovated it all and survived in environments that we would never. So I think anytime we have to go beyond being naked, going to the water with our hands and getting water or pulling an apple off a tree or whatever.
Have you, throughout the course of your career, encountered the same photographic subject in different environments or different locations? And if so, what was that like?
The same person. Yeah, I've encountered soldiers from Afghanistan in the Arctic. Yeah, like we were in the desert being shot at, and then we were in Alaska being frozen by the weather. So I've had a lot of those, especially in the Canadian military is not very big. And obviously Canada, 40% of Canada is in the Arctic, and then there's the subarctic, so more than half of Canada is in the Arctic. So I've run into people multiple times. In the U.S. military, some people, I met them in Afghanistan. Now they live in Virginia, work at the Pentagon, or they're civilians now, and we're friends. So I have, and okay, I'll tell you the funny stories. It's good, humor is good, because there's some dark stuff here, like apocalypse, end of the world. Those Marines, if you look at my website, I did these series of portraits, and I thought I wanted to capture these faces of these 19, 20-year-olds who are from all over the United States, fighting this war, this foreign policy implemented by the Bush administration. I just wanted their faces, not them doing anything, just to see who they are. And so the work became so popular, and their portraits, that I kind of felt like I should let them know when we published the photos, because I took those photos in 2008. We're in 2024, so I have a little Facebook chat with them. And I know them all. Some of them, I have 30 family members who follow me on Facebook. We regularly see each other on Facebook. Almost all of them are out of the Marines now. And I think one day an art critic wrote quite a good review, but in a piece, they're going to criticize some stuff. They're art critics. I get this Facebook message. We know where this art critic lives, from that Marine group. I'm like, no killing the art critic. I'm saying killing as an exaggeration, but I meant no threatening the art critic. He's okay. That's his job. They're like, we're just making sure. We're very protective over you. These photos, you've been so respectful to us. And I just thought it was a really funny moment. I'm like, no ski masks, no threats, nothing. We'll just send him a message. I'm like, no. So funny moments like that, But I think one of those Marines, I hadn't seen him. He lives in Massachusetts. One night I'm out with a friend from the Wall Street Journal. We go for dinner. He goes, let's go for a drink at a bar. It's late. I'm like, it's cold. Let's go home. He goes, one more. So we go out of our way to go to this bar he wants to go to. We get there, and I hear, Louie. I'm like, turn around, and it's one of the Marines there with his brother, just happened to be there for a drink. He was just visiting for some veterans conference. It was very, very surreal. So some of them were single, are married, have kids, and I know some of their families. So it's interesting watching them change as people too,
An audience member asked how aspiring journalists might prepare themselves for approaching a career in this field.
Go out and witness stuff. I know, if there's upheavals, go see it. Go see what's happening in your country, in your community. Go to museums. Go to art museums. Expose yourself to as many cultural experiences as you can, even outside of your own community, so you can experience how other people live their lives, and you will be enriched. So that sounds very idealistic, but that's what I did. So.
The final question of the session asked Louie what brought him personally to war photography.
Well, so for me, I'm a kid. I kept hearing, you're going to take the bread at the dinner table and you're going to wipe every drop of sauce, as Italian background, of the plate. Because during the war, we didn't have a lot of food. And that could apply to anyone growing up poverty anywhere, whether it's in a city in the north of the United States or in the south or anywhere in the world. And it was like, then you would hear stories about the war. I heard about stories about the war, and I had to imagine it. So when I first started going to libraries, I went right to the World War II section, started pulling books out. I'm like, oh, this is what Nazis look like. This is what they did. Oh, and I started forming these very, very early ideas about right and wrong, history, who was doing what. I just started working in photojournalism, and you could cover war by covering just people who are refugees who escaped the United States. War is more than just guns and shooting. War can be someone who's just rediscovering, evolving their identity after they've come to the United States as they grapple with the loss of a country they had to leave, whether it's Iraq or Pakistan or Afghanistan. So war photography, and when I think of war photography, I think some of the most important pictures of the war are Margaret Burke's white pictures from the Auschwitz. There's many important pictures, but there's no shooting in those photos. But they're evidence, so no one can say, that didn't happen, no Holocaust denying. So I think that, war photography, I like to expand out there's the aftermath of war, there's veterans. So my friend's parents, who only passed away years ago, were Auschwitz survivors. Those are war photographs, prisoners of war, So I think that the leftover equipment of war, people who make weapons of war, you can take all those photographs here. Those are all war photographs. Guantanamo Bay are war photographs, so unresolved parts of the war that we think is over. So So yeah, I just started covering it, and then I think I did a refugee story when we thought we won the war in Afghanistan, and refugees were being encouraged or forced to leave Afghanistan, Pakistan, go back to Afghanistan. So I followed refugees coming back here as well. So that was the beginning. And then when Afghanistan kind of blew up in 2006, I started covering the war, and then I started covering it from there. I'm kind of glad I didn't was older, because I have colleagues who are younger, and they made a lot of mistakes personally, led to substance abuse, psychological issues, sort of real challenges. It's not an easy thing to do. So I'm glad I did it when I was more in my 30s.
A few days after the presentation, I sat down with Daniel Hong to get his perspective. Daniel is a fourth-year Brown College resident who has helped out with Symposia production before and intends to pursue a career in media.
Hi, I'm Daniel Hong. I'm a fourth year. I think it was interesting how he looked at the Arctic as this sort of like hostile environment where he talked a lot about technology, and that was something that I was really interested in, especially when he talks about technology being something as simple as like a sled or something created by the Inuits. Like the Arctic technology for them was Inuit technology. I think the most prominent picture that I saw was, I believe it was a tank in the Nordic countries, probably Finland, and it was just completely covered in snow, and there were two soldiers on top of it. And I think that was the image that most struck out to me as a combination of like modern technology and the natural environment. And I think it's really interesting how Louie mixed up those two when he went to the Arctic. Most of, if not all of my journalism has been on grounds, and it hasn't been really that hectic. Unfortunately, I had to leave early before the Gaza encampment, and that was something I may have done if I was on grounds. What journalists do in war, I think, is important. It reminds me of a documentary on James Nachtwey. He was a famous photojournalist, and talking about like a testament to what happened and to depict it in its entirety. And I think Louie also mentions that at points in the talk. And there's something to be said about photographing these people in such vulnerable situations. And I think that's a responsibility that journalists need to have in mind. And he mentioned their code of ethics, and really thinking about, when I take this picture, what am I trying to depict? Am I trying to capture the full humanity of the person I'm taking, of that subject? And that's something that I might have to consider when I go into the professional field. I might go into war zones, I don't know really, but with the job market, I'll take anything, honestly. I think it's interesting when he talked about January 6th, and when he was at that moment, and he talked about how like all the years of experience made him instinctively draw on that and automatically figure out what to do. For me, that's inspiring to hear, and that's something that I want to be able to do. Right now, I'm just in the process of figuring out, okay, how do I want this shot to look, and how do I want to film scenery to be able to just do it automatically and in such an tense situation, and to figure out, especially when he was talking to those people who were gonna beat him up because they thought he was from Antifa.
Yeah.
It was kind of funny, that the concept of an Antifa photographer for me, but being able to navigate those situations and just do what needs to be done is something that I want to be able to achieve when I go into media.
You can read The Next Cold War by Louie Palu in the fall 2024 issue of the Virginia Quarterly Review, or see it on their website, VQRonline.org. Louie's full portfolio can be seen on his website, louiepalu.com. Special thanks to Louie Palu, Paul Reyes, and the Virginia Quarterly Review for co-hosting this talk. Symposia is a production of Brown Residential College at the University of Virginia and the Virginia Audio Collective at WTJU 91.1 FM. Tell your friends to find us wherever they get their podcasts.